Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Steve Wall, and I've had the opportunity and the fun of facilitating this event all week. This is a Kaizen event at Licking County, and Kaizen is actually from two Japanese words, Kai meaning to break or destroy, and Zen meaning life or for the good. So literally a Kaizen event is about breaking things apart to make them better. And we spent the entire week doing just that. I think you'll be very impressed with the results. Kaizen Event begins with having the right people in the room, and this group did a great job of bringing in everyone from people who do the work, to customers of the work, to people who work similar kinds of jobs. The whole process continues on by making sure we're all on the same page. We then take the process and we try to make whatever is invisible visible, and then we begin to analyze the process and redesign a process that does exactly what we need for ourselves and for our customers. I know you'll be very impressed with the kind of work everyone did, so if I could, let me introduce the team sponsor, and that's Jerry.
Thank you, Steve. It has been a pleasure to have you guys here to work on this together. The county has been working through taking a look at major subdivision review process. It's a very long, cumbersome process, one that we couldn't handle directly in our office. So as a result of that, we have decided that the best way to deal with this was to ask a whole host of people to come and help us. That's what this Kaizen event has done. It's allowing us to look at the process that we have in place to try to, for the customer, for my office, for all people and participants, to decrease the amount of time it takes to get the same thing through and still finish with a quality product at the end. So we have worked toward that, trying to have the customer happy as we're finished, or at least understand that we've done our part. Maybe not happy, but understand that we've done all that we can to get them through the process, make decisions early, and that's essentially going to, at the end, provide a position that the quality of development remains strong and that the community itself recognizes it's a great place to live, work, recreate, and play, and educate. This is only about half of the people who participated in. We actually had representatives from different communities involved, from the city, the municipalities. We had consultants. We had 2 different counties that join us, participate in this process. Had the county engineer's office, the prosecutor's office. I want to thank all of you for being here. While the county commissioners are not actually in the audience now, each of them were involved, stepped in. It's a highly important point for me to know that we've had a lot of people involved in a process that will take time for us to actually implement all, but we actually saw some other results that could occur right away.
So as Jerry mentioned, we were looking at the major subdivision process, and really we need to know what exactly we're dealing with. So we're dealing with the major subdivision process and knowing what exactly are we getting ready to tackle. And we said this is basically our scope, very simple, but our scope is that we're going to begin when we start to get a question about somebody that wants to divide their property. So right from the beginning, what information are they pulling? How are they entering the process? How are they contacting us? We found out that there actually was multiple points of entry to this, multiple people they were contacting, possibly pulling the same information. But that's where our process begins, is when our customer says, I want to divide my property, how do I do this? What information do I need? Where do I get that information? Who do I talk to? So right from the beginning, that's the beginning of our scope. At the end of our scope is when they record the plat. So that's really what our customer cares about. When I have a plat that I can actually record and sell my land that I'm developing, I can sell my land to somebody else, make a profit, provide them a home site, provide them a site for economic development purposes, whether it's industrial, commercial. That's really what we're dealing with, is that's our scope from beginning to end. In order to start to get our minds wrapped around what it is we're dealing with, we wanted to deal with some baseline data. What is it that our customers think now? What is the real time? In general, we all know we want to make it faster. We know that it's cumbersome, but what does the data really tell us? And some of what we have painted up here is that on our process time, it was taking anywhere from 4 to 9 months just in the process. That doesn't include all the extra time for construction and the things that the applicant has to do, their customer has to do on their own. But this is just in our process. It was taking 4 to 9 months. We know we wanted to reduce that down. We were aiming for at least 30% by redesigning it, getting it down over 2 months to 6 months. On our customer costs, this was something that we know on our end. At a minimum, there's a lot of fees because we spend a lot of time in this process, so the community is paying to review these plans, making sure that they are actually conforming with the regulations, which are going to provide a high quality development. We wanted to at least get our inspection fees, our review fees down, so that the community doesn't have to pay for this process either, knowing that there's a lot of other engineering costs that our customers are paying for because of this time spent in this process. And we got some numbers on a survey back on that, and basically it can be very high. The ranges were wide, but there's a belief that our customers say that this process increases their costs significantly. So we're going to also eliminate that or reduce it by 30% basically. Under our staff time, we're looking at potentially 43 to 54 hours to go through this process. And that's obviously staggered over this 4 to 9 month period. And we want to reduce that down by 20% or more. Again, saving our community money and redeploying those hours to other good uses of our time. And then lastly, customer satisfaction level. In a survey for the last 2 years, folks that have gone through this process that responded, the average was a 5.6 out of 10. That was their overall satisfaction with this process. So very low. We want to improve that by at least 20% to get that up. And just a couple more points of some baseline data that were helpful for us. In this same survey, the satisfaction level with the actual amount, directly with the amount of time that it took, was a 4.8, so less than half out of 10. So those levels are very low, and that's an average. Some were 1, 2, and depending on what happened with their particular project. The other thing that we noted with that survey is that there's a hesitation to develop in Licking County, and we've heard this from several folks. But the question we asked was that, based upon your experience with this process, would you hesitate to develop again in Licking County? And the average response was actually between that they would disagree with that, so they're going to hesitate to develop again, or they would be neutral. So we're definitely not encouraging them to come back and have high quality development in our county based upon just our process. And then the last item was just that was interesting to note. You look behind you and you see this process as it exists today, and we all can see that it's cumbersome. But even the folks that deal with this the most, because that's who responded in our survey, the half dozen to 10 or so people that responded are folks that work in our process all the time. And even their responses showed that if you equated it to a letter grade, that they only understood the process and the regulations at a C or D level. So again, these are the people that should know the process the best because they've gone through it multiple times. And so it's still hard for them to understand what they actually have to go through.
We started the process by using the SIPOC method. We started with the process, then we took in consideration the suppliers' inputs and outputs and customers.
The process at this level was at a larger, broader scale versus what you see on the back wall behind you. From there, we outlined our common vision, which included items that we would all like to see as outcomes, which would include being able to easily identify what's needed, know exactly how the process works, know where we are in the process, and easily know who all is involved in the process and at each step in the phase. So from there, we mapped out our process. What you see in this picture is the process that our office internally mapped out on the bottom months ago within our office. And on top is the process that was mapped out as part of the Kaizen event. In total, the process includes approximately 122 steps and 14 decision points.
So from there, we use a tool called Chemu Wood. It's a tool to look at all the waste in our process. It includes transportation waste, inventory waste, motion, the underutilization of staff or resources, waiting, overprocessing, overproducing, and the defects in the process. So again, behind you, all the little orange Post-it notes are all the areas that we've identified in these 122 steps that may have some waste throughout the process. From there, we use some improvement ideas and some tools to kind of narrow our focus down, which include a silent brainstorming where everybody sat around the table, wrote down ideas of the ideal situation for the process, how we like it to be improved. If this process were to be improved, how would the community and those involved benefit from them? And once we wrote those down, they were placed on a chart, and we couldn't talk during that situation. We had to organize all the 60+ Post-it notes into 5 or 6 various categories by commonalities. From there, we use a tool, an impact control matrix, the image on the left, where we had to rate it from a high impact on the community or low impact based on that Post-it note, and if how high or low of a control we have into the 4 quadrants. And then again from there, we took those elements and then listed them by commonalities into a Pareto diagram. You can kind of see more or less a bar graph of commonalities in the process. From there, again, we took those, everything just kind of builds on each other throughout the whole week. We broke out into various groups to try to figure out how we can improve this process. One group broke out and kind of tried to figure out how can we get from our current state down to a new process map. We had groups looking at some of the ideas we came up with were a fact list or a check sheet at the beginning of the process. And so one group worked out to kind of help brainstorm and develop an idea of what that fact sheet would look like. And then another group kind of looked at a FAQ type list for the process that'd be easily identifiable that builders and contractors can use at the very beginning of the stage.
So once we were able to complete all the research, the discussions, the brainstorming, we were able to really start redesigning the process. At this point, we split into 3 groups. We were in completely separate rooms. We had no idea what the other groups were doing, and part of the brainstorming continued, so we created what we thought the new process should look like. And as you can see, just the pattern of Post-it notes in the slide show you that each group came up with a unique process. From there, we took all these new great ideas, talked through them some more, figured out what was realistic, what wasn't, and even improved on those ideas. The new process looks like this. So again, we had some of the same stakeholders, we had some of the same steps, but we actually were able to eliminate and rethink a fair bit of steps. So you note on the bottom, it says the process has now, in the new process, 40 steps and 5 decision points. Do you remember what the number was earlier on the original plan that we had, the new process versus the old process? Visual representation of that. Just look at the length of this new process versus the old process. There's clearly about a 2/3 reduction in that. So the original process, the old one, 122 steps, the new one, 40 steps. The old process had 14 decision points, the new one has 5. So we've reduced that by over 50%. So quite an impact for the work that we have done this week. Now we're going to have Brad come up and tell us some more about the results.
For the results of the process, we reduced the process time by 50 to 60%, as Denise kind of alluded to. We also believe we reduced the customer's cost by 30%. We reduced staff time by 25 or 24%, and we believe will improve customer satisfaction, but that'll be determined as developers start going through the process, and actually, determined by us as well as it's going through the process. The improvements we went through at the beginning of the process and identified some issues, as you can see on the left side there, and then on the right is the result of the new process, what we believe the improvements are. So a couple examples. At the beginning, there's always initial confusion as to how to go through the process, who to contact. There's multiple avenues to get into the process. They may contact a township, they may contact a consultant, they may contact us. So what we did was we come up with a checklist or fact sheet of common elements in the process, the agencies that you need to contact, what their contact information is, outline of the process. And so everybody has the same information. We're going to have a website for that so that any township trustee or zoning inspector can direct people to that, consultants can direct people to that, or we can direct people to that, and everybody's getting the same information and the same about the process. Another one, for example, is preliminary plans being too complex. So we're looking at simplifying the preliminary plan requirements. This will take a regulatory amendment, so that won't be something right immediate, but that'll be something we'll be working towards over the next year. And then reduced the wait time for meeting dates. Basically, we eliminated formal deadlines and meetings, and it's more fluid so that developers can submit as their projects are ready, and there's routine meetings to address those issues. Benefits of the new process: less time waiting for the developers, more consistent information to the developers. Developers can plan in the winter and be ready to break ground and develop in the spring. We're going to look at an electronic process so that there's less manual transportation of plans and reports and comments between the agencies that are reviewing and the developers and their consultants. There'll be more time to allow for more work to be done by all, and by that means, you know, there's less time for each project, so more projects can get through the process. And we'll know where we are in the process. So we'll have an avenue of it's a resource that everybody can look at to see where they are in the process. And then finally, each department is freed up from a cumbersome process. So the big items will save customer time and money, increase basically the tax base will increase faster because projects can develop quicker. And then finally, improve economic development and quality of life in Licking County.
So we got to a point where we have redesigned our process. We can see some of the projected benefits that we think will occur with this new process, but it doesn't stop there. We haven't accomplished anything if we stop at that point, and we recognize that. The really neat thing I think about this whole week, this Kaizen event, is that typically this kind of thing would occur over weeks and weeks and months in order to do some of the things that we did today, to get people on board with this and to move forward to the point where you actually redesign a process. And then what do we need to do to actually implement these changes that we're talking about? Instead of just talking about them, we have gone through step by step very quickly in a week time frame. And we've gotten to a point where we've got this redesign process that we're going to start to move forward with. It may be tweaked here and there as we move forward, but we have a real good idea on how this should look. We took the next step after that point and said, okay, so what needs to occur in order to make this a reality? It's not just let it stop, but what's going to happen to make it a reality? And we began to create all these action registers. We identified several things. So we're again doing this within this week, really 4 days at this point. And we're saying, here are the items, here are the people we need to talk to, here's what we need to do to get approved, here's what we need to have, these are the questions we need to have answered, and we're outlining those things right away. And then we're going to be putting together a Gantt chart in order to track all these items. I'm going to skip ahead just a second since we're talking about it. So we've listed these 10 action plans that need to occur, and we actually began to list out what needed to occur in each of these plans. So we've talked about having our board meet more frequently, but what is that going to really take? How we're going to need to get them on board with it? How are we going to organize those schedules? Even simple things like that can really stop some of the progress that we've talked about. So we've listed all these things, and who's responsible, and we're going to track that as we go forward, and we're going to be meeting on 30, 60, 90 day periods so that in a couple of months this stuff is going to be done. It's not going to stop here. Let me go back up here. Some of the stuff that we began to do again just in this week was we've talked about creating a single source of information for folks so that they're not wondering right at the beginning, okay, how likely is it for me to be able to develop without sidewalks? Do I really have to have soilers and stormwater control regulations as part of this? Do I have the right zoning? All these different questions that they're going to ask. We already started designing templates for some of those items, the frequently asked questions, simple things like the checklist, and how is that going to look? What do we need to put in the single source? We talked about the online mapping and making this as simple as we can for our customers to pull down their information. So we already began working on designing those items. Oops, sorry, wrong way. And as I mentioned, we're going to have some follow-up, so to be assured that this is not going to stop here. We're going to follow up on a 30, 60, 90 day, this group that we've assembled, and to make sure that this becomes a reality to implement what we're calling this amazing new process.
So I will not have done a good job if I really don't go back to where I started and thanking each of you for being involved in it. This actual process and what we put together is a result of grant work that our office put together. We had done different types of activities to streamline what we're doing, and this one, as you can attest, has been a very complicated one. So I want to thank the state for what they did in putting this together. We actually have this run through the University of Baldwin Wallace. Steve Wall, as a master black belt fella, came and was able to not have to karate chop any of us, but still found a way to take the mess and chop it into something that was better. I mentioned before that the participants included many. I haven't listed, or I haven't said them all, but we tried and want to have them all listed. Again, this process doesn't work if we just look at it in a small group, but as a collective community working together to try to make things better. So let me go ahead and do a couple call outs that I know that I missed earlier. To Westport Homes, thank you for all that was done in showing up as a developer and telling us things that maybe we aren't thinking about. Again, because this is an economic development and a development tool, we recognize that there are benefits to have things figured out better for the community after it's finished as well as in the process. So it was our privilege to have representatives from Grow-Licking County and Chamber of Commerce involved in this activity. Again, the participation by each of you has only given us the beginning of a process that we look forward to implementing.
Well, it's very enlightening to know what some of the other communities do and how their regulations are, and especially the difference between the city and the county. Much more similarity than differences, so that was good to hear.
Yeah, I think the process is going to work well for Licking County. I was daunted by the task that we had to cover with all the things that the Planning Commission does and how big that process was and all the overlaps.
Well, I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction. I think that, as we were mentioning earlier, that any time that you can reduce the time for a developer's time is money, and consistency is important. So if they understand what they have to do to get through the process, then that gives them confidence that they can get through that process.
For a developer or someone who hasn't developed in Licking County before, just coming in to the development process, it's a little bit confusing as to exactly who they need to go to get what they need, and what the process time actually is going to be. There's a lot of critical things that we do need to do from the commissioner's standpoint, from the planning standpoint, and from the engineer's standpoint as far as reviewing things and that. But we can also, like you.
I think we did. We've definitely decreased time, and to developers, time is money. So I definitely think we've helped them.
We have gained a much better understanding of the process to figure out where the soil and water planning department and other stakeholders can work together, because together we really can take care of all of our resources.
We'll probably use a good deal of the ideas that you have here to update some of our processes and procedures.
It was a great learning process, discovering the existing process and working with this project to refine and cut out some areas and also make it more informative for
everybody involved as far as the whole process, and I think it'll be a great benefit to the Licking County.
The whole purpose of this Kaizen event is to reduce the time in which we do these things by coordination, better coordination amongst each entity involved in the process.
I get a better understanding of what the planners deal with as far as their internal process, and I think that being able to help with this, we get to kind of give some more input to the county from a developer's side to kind of help iron out some difficulties that they run into.